Welcome to Culture Crush with me, your host, Dan Dowman, where we get to meet some of the world's leading culture shapers, future makers, and power shakers. We're talking groundbreaking cultures, leadership challenges, and what you can do about them. Today, I'm joined by the exceptional culture shaper, Janine Jakob. Janine, it's so great to have you on the show.
I'm so grateful to be with you on the other side of the world.
Indeed, all the way from China. Now, one of the things that people won't know, but I'm going to tell them, is the number of times that Janine and I have met now, considering we've never actually met, is quite remarkable. We have been trying to make this episode happen for weeks, it seems, but we just haven't been able to get the technology on our side. So what you are witnessing, ladies and gentlemen, is the breakthrough moment. It's happened. We can both see each other and we can both hear each other. And we are both just so excited to have this breakthrough moment. So welcome, everybody. It's going to be a great episode, and I'm so excited.
So today, you don't have to read our sign language. You can actually literally hear something.
Exactly. I mean, what a moment. What a moment to celebrate and treasure. Now, won't dwell on that for too long. I wanted to ask you about your story. Now, I've been looking at your LinkedIn profile, and I've got to know you a little bit through our conversations. And it seems to me that you've got a bit of a jump start in your career at HP. And then I think you launched your own enterprise in 2019, stepping into the world of team building, leadership coaching. And it's taking you all the way to China, which I think you are from Germany, from memory. And so Destination China, bit of a surprise. I'm sure you weren't planning that way back in the day. So why don't you give us a behind the scenes tour of your story so far, your career journey, and how you've ended up where you are?
Thank you so much, Dan. You know what? Let me start differently. I've never done this before. Let's move into the future. We always want to know of what are our goals? How do we want our life to be like? What means happiness for us? What's your definition of success? So sometimes as a business owner, let's say you want to make 1 million of revenues and euros. Well, then you break it down from the future goal. You go into like the present moment and you can like basically calculate how much you have to sell. So I'm going to tell you this today. I want to be a serial entrepreneur. And when I worked for HP, and this was my dream company, and I had amazing jobs like I was 23, got a senior account management position, was the only woman, and HP invested in me, newly graduated. All of my clients and colleagues were men, double my age. Woman in IT is so exciting. I loved it. But nowadays, I want to be a serial entrepreneur. And why do I do what I do? Because I want to make a global impact. I think that everybody deserves to live a happy life. And if you choose to, also be successful. So that's why I'm very grateful that I had this corporate career. I have that startup experience. But how did I end up in China? For my double master's degree. I did not plan to quit my safe corporate job at HP in Germany or to live in China. No, I just took the opportunity actually while I was still working for HP Germany as an account manager. I did a 2-year double master's degree in full time, worked 15 hours still for HP Germany, and then did 2 semesters abroad at a French top business school in Suzhou, China, because I love to throw myself out of the comfort zone, jump into the cold water, because I love to grow and lifelong learning, and that's a good opportunity. So that's how I actually found my purpose in life. Quit my corporate job and stayed in China and founded my own company. Because, then I was thinking, there's so many people like me in the West who can bring happiness in workplaces and work on cultures, have that knowledge that I just got during my master's degree. But in the East, there's not that many. And I even started to do my own research so that I can really combine my Western knowledge with the Chinese localized culture and combine it and make a global impact.
So clearly very ambitious about the future going forward. And you know the kind of the goals you want to hit, you know that you want to have a portfolio of companies under your belt. But this kind of entrepreneurial journey started with leadership, team development, things like that.
Yeah.
What was it about that space that you felt drawn to? Because I guess you can't separate the fact that, yes, you have personal ambitions, and that's great, owning a portfolio of companies, wonderful. But you started with something that was more vocational. You started with this sense of wanting to help people find happiness, help people find purpose, developing teams, influencing cultures. Why was that where you started with your entrepreneurial journey? Because that doesn't just speak to personal ambition, that speaks to your ambitions for others. So tell us why you started there.
So I've always been a people person. People ask me, Janine, why are you so energetic? Well, as an extrovert, I love to mingle and talk to people. I get excited talking to amazing people. I also got to interview you, right? So going back, like in my double master's degree, I took this one course called The Science of Happiness by Professor Schmidt-Kunz in Germany at Munich Business School. That course changed my life. I had learned about statistics, about how companies also implement the theories on how to have happy and engaged employees at workplace. So we really deeply looked at the foundation. How can you have the engaged employees at workplace and have a lot of like well-being and happiness? And also what's the correlation between happiness and success at the same time? So leadership is a very important component. And having even here interviewed people at Alibaba, I realized that if it's not the leader as the role model who implements the knowledge and the new techniques first, the subordinates are not going to do it. They're not going to, so many people at Alibaba here in China, they do not take advantage of the amazing offerings that the company culture actually provides. And they stay very like culturally Chinese and hustle hard, work 996, which means 9 a.m. till 9 p.m., 6 days a week, because they're really hoping that they can make some legacy and hopefully get, in China, we call it a hongbao, a red package, which is some extra money, which, for example, an HR manager of Alibaba told me she would then share with her employees, and everybody feels appreciated and good, although they're exhausted, burned out. So basically, like leadership is an important component. Culture. I've learned about positive psychology, and I started to notice on myself within these 3-4 months when I just took this one course, how the changes inside me have happened. And at that time, HP actually had just gone through the company split and was about to go into a merger. So we became DXC Technology. So basically, change management is a big topic. And you go back to the same topics of leadership, culture, dealing with people's fears, how to lead them. And there's so many components that I could start to implement or suggest my bosses, or in our account management team, I was even allowed to give some motivational speeches in our team meeting, or like suggest a couple of things for the changing and the happiness of our team, where I started to realize, wow, it's a game changer. I could practice it. And this was just so exciting. And I think everybody absolutely deserves to experience that and to work in a good workplace.
So it almost seems to me that there was a thread that emerged for you when you were doing this training. You're learning about the science of happiness, and it sort of felt like a pretty natural step where you thought, well, here is a space where I can make an impact. I'm learning these things and I want to pass them on to other people. I want people to connect with their own sense of happiness and fulfillment. And if I can be a voice in that space, why not be a voice in that space? It kind of sounds like it happened fairly organically, that you had this stimulus of education, this stimulus in some ways like a revelation by education. And you went, I can actually apply this where I am. I can apply this with other people and help them experience that same eye-opening moment that I have had. Now, when you were talking about the leadership model in China, and actually that experience with Alibaba, and people not necessarily, if they don't see the leader role modeling a response to those benefits and those opportunities, the people who work for them or report into them, they're not going to do it either. And what you're saying, therefore, in Chinese culture, that actually at a leadership level, even though there are benefits available to people, the leaders don't access them or don't opt into them, and so their employees also follow that role modeling and don't access them either. Is that what you're seeing? Leaders don't do it, so the subordinates don't do it?
It does happen quite a lot. And because working hard is still a very important part of the component of happiness. Your grandparents might tell you, of course, little Dan, I want you to be happy. And this is not only in Chinese culture like this. But first, Dan, you have to work really, really hard so that in 30 years, you can be the CEO of Huawei, Alibaba, Microsoft, HP. And then in the future, in 30 years, after you working hard, you will be happy. Have you heard that before?
Similar things. Yeah, similar things.
Yeah. So, so this hardworking culture is still like a very big thing. I mean, look at Japan. It's exactly the same, right? And being mentally weak. I mean, it's still like positive psychology or taking advantage of like a counselor, something like this is even offered in your company, is still not very common. It might be seen as a weakness, and like we have some cultural differences here. That's why I was really saying, like, I analyzed and interviewed a couple of like small, medium businesses on how they actually define happiness before I started to implement something in the workplace. And actually, what happened when I was still working at HP Germany virtually and studying at the French business school Schema in Suzhou, I started the Happiness Association as a student association. So it gave me like a safe environment where I could start to test, organize conferences, meet different kind of people to try out things and also get to know the local culture, basically, right? So it's always important. We always need to adapt not just to the culture, but also to the people, to the different generations. I mean, it's not only about like hierarchies. The better you know the people and the culture, like you need to come up with techniques that fits to them, because otherwise they're not going to do it. But yeah, I would say that in the US, probably a lot of people would take advantage of like the resources that you offer. Like HP had from volunteering to different kind of like events, support for women. As I said, like young employees getting career opportunities and happiness that we could practice in so many different ways. Working from home even before COVID and so many things. Sports that we could do. In Finland, we even had sauna on the rooftop at the headquarter of HP Finland. So there's lots of different like offers and ways what you can offer for your employees, but not everybody would take advantage of it. So you always have to individualize.
So thinking about that, the Chinese context, it sounds to me that there is actually there's a culture of really, really working very, very hard for a long time. And that seems to be the way the business world is focused. Do you see your role as trying to introduce a new lens on working culture? Is that kind of like what you've been trying to do with your coaching company? And do you see any differences with kind of the way startups work in Chinese business culture? Like, are they operating in a slightly different way? So just talk us through some of those nuances, if you see them, and what you see your role as being in speaking to those environments, speaking a level of truth to those powers.
Yeah. So I started my company, actually, I wanted to offer happiness consulting, but happiness doesn't seem to sell. Even in the Western world, people are not gonna like really spend much money on like, hey, let's buy happiness, right? So at the end, it is all marketing. And I had to like learn how to use different kind of words, how to change the offering to adjust to who is actually my target audience. Secondly, I was thinking, I mean, this is for every business owner like this. I was thinking, who's my target audience? Oh, I'm German in China. It must be easy to connect with Germans, like-minded people. And in Suzhou, we had a lot of male-driven traditional manufacturing companies, which even there, I got a lot of negative feedback. Ha, 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 this young girl trying to tell us, to sell us happiness and well-being. We know how to do it better. We don't need this, right? So for a lot of like startup cultures, like in Shenzhen, there's a big community, and in Hangzhou, a lot of the younger generations, their values are also very different. They appreciate, for example, a lot of freedom, which means you would need a different company culture. You cannot compare these company cultures with a traditional state-owned company here, right? So the cultures and the people who would work are differently. If you look at the younger generations, even here in China, not only in the West, they're starting, like some of them come from wealthier families nowadays. They don't have to hustle that hard anymore. But they might enjoy work-life balance. They might enjoy a company that has a purpose, maybe sustainability or so. So they get motivated by different kind of things. Again, it means you have to create a different culture. Now, coming to my role, I wanted to offer happiness consulting, so it didn't work. And then I realized that the need for career coaching, especially from a foreigner, and also like soft skill trainings was even bigger. So it was easier. And I didn't have any savings from my business school. I took a bank loan, and at one point I had quit my job, right? So I also had to make a living. So I went a little bit off of this original purpose of just offering happiness to companies. And I didn't want to like offer just mindfulness, because mindfulness is just one part out of this whole thing of my tool set on how I can bring happiness to companies and to people and so on. So nowadays I'm telling people, hey, I help you and your team to perform better. I call myself a peak performance consulting or peak performance coach trainer. Because it sounds better. People are more willing to pay money for this, because if they can see very quick, fast results, hey, I'm having more sales now. My KPIs are changing fast in a positive way, instead of selling happiness. Like happiness is not very tangible, right? So I changed, again, the sales approach, the target group, like Australians, Americans, and Chinese who got educated abroad. They're very open for these kind of topics also, to try out something new, a different new way of training. But then, you know, what I did is I love to motivate, and I started my Monday morning motivation community. So every Monday at 7 a.m., we have a free webinar that anybody can join from abroad or in China. We have over 5,000 members right now, and we're about to go global. So I did a lot of like speaking about and like sharing this on social media, topics that I'm interested in to inspire people with what I have to say, whether it's about mental fitness, whether it's about, hey, have you actually ever heard anybody to talk about burnout for entrepreneurs? Like working in corporate HP, I can tell you tons of my clients, partners who have had burnout, but I never learned or associated about entrepreneurs and burnout. That's a topic I've spoken about because I've experienced it myself, and not just even once. So there's so many different components that I try to speak about in motivational speeches, little videos, because I am hoping to plant a seed. That's part of my purpose. I can make a global impact by planting one seed. And maybe it's just one thing that I say today that you, the audience, or then you're like, wow, or ah, it clicked. And you're going to tell your friends, your wife, your husband, your family, your colleagues, and you're going to start implementing something in your own life. And if you're a business owner, for example, you're going to start implementing this not only in your friend circle, in yourself and your family, but in your team, maybe in the way how you also work with your partners, with your clients. So I actually planted that seed through something I said or how I made you feel through whatever work I did. Speaking, training, networking events, coaching, consulting, however you want to call it, right? But I made a global impact because of the butterfly effect or the domino effect. And, you know, I work very hard. I still have to learn how to take better care of myself. But at the end, when I go to bed at night, I'm happy, I'm satisfied. Especially if I hear the stories of companies, of individuals on how I have changed or positively impacted their lives through what I'm good at.
So you know that we've got a couple other stops that we want to hit on our journey together today. We want to talk about your culture crush, an organization or a person that you admire, you're taking some learnings from, and you think, yeah, you're not endorsing their whole culture perhaps, because every culture has its challenges, but you want to highlight a particular brand or a person to be your culture
Yeah.
crush. And then we're going to talk about leadership challenges and what some practical advice around what people can do about those. But before we get to those points, let me just see if I've got this right. So it seems to me that you had this idea to be a happiness consultant, right? That was a kind of a sense of calling, vocation. You wanted to bring that piece of goodness to the world. And you wanted to help people, bring people into that story, help them find their happiness. But what you found was that didn't sell well. So what you had to do is sort of reposition. You're still essentially still doing the same thing, still focusing on happiness. That's what's really at the core of this thing. But instead, because you have to make it has to be a business, right? Like it has to put food on the table for you. It has to help you sustain your life. And so there was a challenge there to reframe it as peak performance, because actually that's something that people could buy. That's something that they could feel they could invest in. That kind of brought you that sense of stability.
Measurable.
So it's kind of like you wrapped up your happiness calling, I guess you could say, your happiness calling. You've sort of wrapped that in this more marketable frame, which is around peak performance consulting. Have I understood that broadly correctly?
That's correct. And in there, I can use any kind of tool set, whether you call it consulting, coaching, organizational behavior, whatever. Because at the end, my purpose is to make you as an individual or as a team and your organization to give you higher performance, to unlock your full potential. That's my company slogan. But at the same time, I use those techniques that are going to make you feel good and give you some energy back and make you feel well, basically. Yeah, it's a win-win situation. I always, whatever I do, it's about happiness and success at the same time.
I think it's such an important lesson for people who want to start their own businesses, for startup owners, and even for leaders who feel particularly called to lead in a kind of way. Like they don't just view their role as a leader as a job, they view it as a sense of vocation. I think it can be easy to get stuck on the vernacular, like I'm this kind of coach or I'm that kind of coach. And actually take a step back and think, can you still do the things that you want to do and still lead in the way that you want to lead, but realign the language with your internal culture, or realign the language with the language that's commonplace where you work? Because you might just find that you can still do the same work, you can still lead in the same way, but adjusting the vernacular might actually help reduce the friction and allow you to actually do the thing that you want to do. So as a leader, as an entrepreneur, I want to encourage people, try not to get too hung up on the language. Focus on the thing that you want to do. Are there other ways that you can frame it? Are there other ways that you could introduce it or even sell it? Are there other vernaculars that you could use that reduce the friction between what you want to do and what people are going to buy? Like, are there different ways that you can position things that make that relationship building a little bit easier? But we mentioned before, we're going to talk about your culture crush. So why don't you tell me about organization, person you admire, and why they are your culture crush?
Oh, there's so many. I'm going to start with the company. As I mentioned, I worked for HP. It was a dream coming true. So when I was 16 years old, I got a scholarship that came to me. I didn't apply for it. A scholarship came to me, and I was able, one of my biggest dreams coming true, I was able to go to the USA, be an exchange student, live with a local family for 6 months. And I ended up in Las Vegas. So before that, actually, my stepdad had committed suicide when I was 14. So my mom and we were left. And, an exchange like this is normally very, very expensive. But since then, I believe everything can become possible. And living abroad and in a multicultural country like the USA, I started to fall in love with business management, company, startup, psychology, actually. Thanks to the American high school, I got to experience these things, even playing theater. And when I came back, my mom was like, hey, maybe you do an internship at HP. And since then, I was like, I want to do international business and work in a big multinational company. So yeah, I made it to work at HP, and HP is my culture crush. I don't know how they are nowadays, but I was with them for nearly 7 years. And remember, we had the split and we had the merger in between. I've experienced it all in these nearly 7 years. I was studying with them for 3 years. Germany, you can study and work at the same time. And again, this is a wonderful opportunity. You're a student, you are studying, but at the same time, you're having a salary and you are an employee and you have a safe contract after that. I really felt a lot of like value that I got from being an employee in there. And the nicest was the culture. I tell you this. So I was this intern, just came back from Vegas and had another year at school in Germany. So I did this internship at HP, and I remember this student took me to meet their boss. Every day I was in a different department. So his name was JJ. My nickname used to be JJ. And JJ was working at HP for, I don't know, more than 20 years. And he sat down, he took the time and wowed me. This successful senior manager sat down with me, and I felt like I'm the small little like intern. And it was not just 20 minutes, but like for 40, 45 minutes. And he was like, ask me any questions you have. And you know what? I can even tell you like the things that are not good about the company. Just ask me. I'm going to tell you all. And I was like, wow, what a person. JJ at HP in Böblingen. And this is part of the company culture. What wowed me then was like, we had these big offices, like bosses were sitting with us, like no matter which hierarchy, in the same building. They didn't have their offices and where they can shut down the doors. I had the chance, even as like when I got the senior position or even when I was an intern, I had the chance to actually pitch and talk directly to people from higher hierarchies. Whether we had people from the headquarters in the US visiting in Germany, like there was not like in Germany where I have to say, Mr. Dahlman or Mrs. Jakob. No, we basically like in Germany, we say you and we say your first name, and it's already like you're closer together. And I'm allowed to talk to them. I'm allowed to even skip a hierarchy if I feel like, hey, I have a good relationship. I want to pitch something to another person. So there's like, for me, this was like full of opportunities. The company even like, I remember I had this account delivery manager, and he actually studied biology. He was in his mid-end 40s at the time, and he was in like for IT, for the whole IT data center and services, the account delivery manager. This had nothing to do with biology, but the company was saying compared to, for example, Mercedes-Benz, where you need to have a PhD, otherwise you can never become like, I think like a senior executive. And I'm sure they have good reasons for that, but anybody can achieve. And you can work in marketing, finance, delivery, or anything else. As long as you do your job, you do your best, you keep on learning. We had the HP University, so you could continuously learn. Empowerment for women. I loved their volunteering program, where we did good things like we gave, like for Christmas, presents to like local communities for adopted children, or we did a lot of good things, even like for Africa, packed rice packages, and you could spend a couple of hours per month from your work time to do it. In Finland, I worked there for 3 months at HP. We organized Red Nose Day, and then they allowed me on the last day to go to the TV show of Red Nose Day, because also with my help, we collected so many donations. So I was in a TV show with them in Finland within these 3 months, and there's opportunities, possibilities. You just got to take them. And I got a sales coach, I got a mentor, and I had an amazing boss who told me, you know, Janine, it is my responsibility to train you and give you all of the resources you need so that one day you, Janine, can do my job better. And you're going to take over my job, and you're going to do it even better than how I'm doing my job today. And this was a man who was not like selfish or had a big ego and was afraid that one day Janine's going to take over his job. No, there was a lot of support and care and just wow. And that's why I had an offer from Ernst & Young. I did not leave. I stayed with HP, and I had amazing bosses, and I'm so grateful because I learned an amazing foundation on how to build a company, how to be process oriented, how to treat clients, how to do sales, like so many things. Like you have no idea how grateful I am to my former bosses, the opportunities, and it is the company culture that made me want to go from internship to applying for the studies and working at HP, for not taking another offer where I would have gotten a tiny bit more money, but staying with them till the end. And I tell you this, if I fail in my company now, I would be very grateful and happy to go back to HP, whether it's Germany or somewhere else at any time, or any of the similar companies that are former HP.
So it sounds like HP had a really diverse program of opportunities and things that people could engage with from an employee perspective, a very rich
Yes.
employee value proposition, which is wonderful. And lots of companies can kind of add those things in, like volunteer days and opportunities to socialize in different aspects. But what it seems sat at the center of why this was a great culture was the opportunity for you to speak freely with senior employees, your opportunity to pitch and bring your ideas to different senior leaders in the organization, for senior leaders to sit down with you and say, hey, my job is to make you so good at what you do that one day you'll have my job and you'll be better than I was. Like, it sounds to me that beyond all the activities that form part of the employee value proposition, it was actually that there wasn't a culture of fear. There wasn't a culture of competition. There was a culture of tell us your honest feedback, tell us your ideas. You are free to engage at different levels of the organization without putting yourself at risk or upsetting egos across the kind of the different levels of management. So I think that's really, really interesting that there was more of a way of being, a way of practice that sat at the heart of that whole cultural offering, which is really interesting and more interesting to me than the activities that you had available. So we've had a look at HP and what a great culture looks like. And I think that leads us very nicely into the space of leadership challenges and solutions. I know you've been thinking about a leadership challenge that you wanted to share with the audience today. And I know you've also been thinking about how can people respond to that challenge in practical ways. So why don't you tell us about the challenge that you've got in mind, and then just roll into the solution. Like, tell us what we can do about that particular challenge.
Let me add one more thing quickly about what you just mentioned with the competition. For anybody who's choosing, should I work for company A, B, or C, or attend this or that university? I want you to check back on what are the values of the company, what are your own values, and can you resonate with them? Because I was thinking, do I want to do my study and work time, the 3 years, with IBM or HP? But I realized that the values of more like the family kind of way with HP resonated more with me. Whereas the IBM is more like elbow society, more competition, is not like mine. And I think this also goes back to as a leader. Hiring people is so challenging. Hiring the right people. And one thing in the hiring process that we need to keep in mind is also the values. What are the values of the company? But also, what are my personal values in my team and my department for me as a leader? So I want to make sure that with that subordinate, we kind of like the values need to be aligned. This is very important. In the hiring process, I also suggest have a couple of maybe some online assessments. Check their global DISC profile, their Myers-Briggs type indicator, or whatever it is to get to know the person, not only in the interview process and from the CV and their grades, but also get to know like some psychological background and information about their types, their personality. That's additional information. And in the hiring process, which is so difficult for us leaders, it's also very important, I think, we're trained in a very rational way. Like our education systems, whether it's in the US, Germany, China, was probably made by left-brainers. And we got trained to think like this, right? So I also want you to use your gut feeling. Like, do not only like ask questions and be rational, but listen to your gut feeling. Some of the best management decisions were made with rational thinking, but also with the gut feeling. There's books out it. And if your gut feeling says you there's something wrong with that person, you might want to listen to it. Listen to your intuition. So hiring new employees is very challenging. And different generations, different cultures have different needs. In big cities like in Shanghai, if somebody, a competitor, pays a little bit more money, the person's gone. But at the same time, then it also means, how can I keep an employee? How can I lower the turnover? How can I motivate a person, not just extrinsically through money or other benefits, insurance, or hey, you have a car or an extra phone? How can I actually also check whether they are intrinsically motivated to work with a company? For example, like, I have a small company. People don't come to work for me or with me because I'm paying the high salaries. They come because of the purpose. They come because they love who I am. They're inspired by me. They want to learn from me, etc. This again also goes back to values, right? So intrinsic motivation is the strongest motivation. And if you read the book of like the Zappos founder or co-founder, Tony Hsieh, happiness, how's it called now? Not Happiness in a Box.
Is it Delivering Happiness?
Yes, Delivering Happiness.
I literally did an interview just before we recorded. My previous guest chose Zappos as their culture crush, and that book particularly. So
I would love to visit their headquarters in Las Vegas one day. It's still on my list, but I think they're currently not doing it. So what I wanted to say is, like, he was also saying that in the beginning, he was not hiring the right people, or he started to learn that from the start, you have to make sure you hire according to the values. That's why setting your vision, mission, purpose, setting your company values, your company culture is important. And especially if like the senior managers that you are hiring, if they're not fitting to your company culture, then also they're not gonna they're gonna have different employees who are not fitting to the company culture. And it's gonna get challenging if you want to grow with them, especially if you have pandemics like the COVID times and an economic recession coming up and so on. So yeah, hiring is so challenging for leaders, I think. Hiring the right team with who you can grow. And in the beginning, I've even noticed like I was a bit low on confidence. And I even had the challenge that leading volunteers of my Monday morning motivation community who I'm not paying versus employees who I paid, I led them differently. And but this had to do something with self-esteem and confidence, right? It's also something that we just need as a leader, right? So yeah, there's a lot of challenges, I would say.
So hiring is the challenge. Difficult to hold on to your employees, especially when you can't offer them extrinsic benefits, financial compensation. It's difficult to hold on to employees in that scenario. So you need to speak to their intrinsic motivations through things like your values as an organization, your purpose. So you have to set those things up right in the beginning so you can attract the right people, the right characters to go on that journey with you. And then you're equipped to grow with those people, for those people to grow with you as an organization and as a leader. Now, really practical concepts. So people are familiar with values, purpose, they can understand what those things are. But we love to get really practical on this show. So how can we turn that concept, let's say something like values, how can we turn a concept like values into something more practical for the listeners today? What's the one thing that you would like leaders to take away, leaders and listeners to take away and try to go on that journey from extrinsic is hard? You need to build on intrinsic motivators through values, purpose, beliefs, things like that. How can we translate that down one more level into something really practical for listeners to take away and try?
I mean, at the end, I said, as a leader, you have to be a role model. So you actively need to live it. And your company has probably already defined like how we live the company culture. How do we live the mission, vision, purpose? Now, even here in China, if you go to the Hilton Hotel in Guangzhou or to some American companies, In the background, you would often see vision, mission, purpose. However, in a lot of companies, it's not actively lived. So I really want to challenge you. And if the company does not define on how vision, mission, and your purpose and values of the company are lived, then you as a leader define it for yourself. How do I, Janine, want to be a role model for my employees, even for my clients and partners, to actually actively live these values or where we want to be? Because, my team's going to model me as well. And also, I'm going to attract the right team members to work with me, right? So I think everybody can really define it for themselves. Let me give you an example. Let's say health is a very important, my number one value is employees first. Let me give you one example. I had an employee and she broke up with her girlfriend and she was saying, Janine, I know you're very busy. I'm not feeling well. She really opened up. She felt like she had trust to me. And she was like, hey, do you mind, can we talk about the breakup? And guys, I was so busy. But if I say that my number one value in the company is employees first, like a lot of companies, including Alibaba, they have customers first, right? But if I'm not openly living it, everybody knows I'm always so busy. But no matter what, for important people in my life, I'm going to find the time. I'm not going to make an excuse. Then worst case, I cancel something. So of course, in the morning, I made some time and I made sure I take the time and let her talk, gave her some advice that she asked for. I just tried my best to not be a boss, but be a human, be empathetic. Because I believe if my employees are not well, every one of us spends at least 8 hours per day in the office or in a work environment. And actually, tests even show that the company culture influences you more than actually your country's culture. So this is why I'm saying you have to be a role model. How can you implement these values and live them every day? So that, and it's not just written on a piece of paper. And that's on how I would like to ask you. Go back to number one, do you even know your vision, mission, purpose of your company? Have you ever heard about it? Number two, check in with yourself. Are you aware of them? Could you cite them? Where can you find it? You should regularly talk to your employees about it. Share it in a team meeting. And most important is be a role model and actively start living it. And then number five, tell your employees and show your employees or give them examples, encourage them that they also actively live that, those values. Or if you say health is an important value, well, then you probably want to make sure that you take care of your health instead of just saying it. Eat healthy regularly, get enough sleep, whatever health basically means for you.
What I love about the example you shared of this is that your company, Full Potential Partners, your first value is employees first. And that's the intention that you've set as an organization. But you, as the leader, as the business owner, have brought that intention to life in a behavior, in an action. You've moved from intention into action. And what you're encouraging people listening to this podcast to do is to go back to their organization's intentions, mission, purpose, vision, values, things like that, and think, how can I translate that into action, into my behavior?
Yeah.
So perhaps a really practical starting point. You've taken us through that list of how you can apply, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but maybe a really good starting point for people to take away and try as soon as this episode finishes is to grab a piece of paper, write down the values of the organization and think, how can I translate that intention into a personal action for me to complete with my employees? Just map the intention into an action that you can deliver as a leader. And maybe as you go through that process, experimenting with a few things, you can bring your team into that conversation and say, hey, I'm going to try these things to try and translate our intentions as a business into actions that we can do on the ground. I think that is such a great place for us to start, for leaders to start. And thank you for giving us such a great example, employees first, into the behavior that you then led with your employee who'd gone through something really, really difficult and painful. Now, we're about done for the time that we've got together, Janine, which is a great shame because I'm sure that we could keep, well, you and I know that we could keep talking for much longer because we've done that before on other calls. But I've so enjoyed our time together, and thank you so much for making some time for Culture Crush, and let's speak again soon.
Thank you so much for being the amazing you. Putting in, it takes a lot of effort to create an outstanding global podcast. So I just appreciate what you do. And I hope if you guys love the show or you love what Dan is doing, remember, it's all about give and take. I would like you to give him a like, send it to one friend. I'm not even asking for 10, just one friend, one colleague who's where you can make your own impact. Sharing is caring, right? And support. Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Culture Crush. If you've enjoyed your time with us, please like and subscribe wherever you're listening from. And if you're a Culture First leader, be sure to visit anthem.oo because we've got lots in common. See you next time.